is your ultimate guide to studying abroad in 2026. Hi, my name is Veronica and I'm the founder of Borderless, where we're helping over 10,000 students internationally get into their dream colleges abroad. And if there is one thing I learned is that it is possible for anyone regardless of where you come from, but prep is extremely important. But don't worry, because I'm here to walk you through all 5 required steps. First, choosing a country, choosing a university, choosing your major, working your extracurricular activities, and finally figuring out scholarships. First, we need to talk about country choice because that determines a lot of things. First thing to think about is language. If you only speak English, it doesn't mean that you are tied to only English-speaking countries. 2 places like Germany or Netherlands have over 400 English-speaking programs each. You will also find English-speaking programs in Asia like China, Japan, or Korea, even though the number of programs would be a lot less. Hong Kong is another option that a lot of students dismiss, but all top universities teach entirely in English. The next thing you have to think about is finances. So many of you want to go to Canada, and yes, I get that, but not many of you know that going to Canada means paying at least $40,000 in tuition. In the United States, that fee can go up to $70,000 a year, and if you include costs like living costs, food, books, insurance, etc., that cost can go up to $100,000 per year. At the same time, you have places like Germany where tuition at public universities is near zero. Yes, that is the range that we're looking at. It can be zero, it can be $100,000, which is why you cannot ask me, hey, how much does it cost to study abroad? We have to be considering every option individually. There are, of course, a lot of scholarship and financial aid options, but we will leave that till the end of the video. The next point that students underestimate a lot is your postgraduate option. I hope you know that, but when you graduate, you cannot just stay in the country for as long as you want. You have to be getting a different visa from your current student visa. And this is where visa policies will differ drastically for every single country. In the United States, if you have a non-STEM major, you only get 1 year of OPT, which means you have 1 year to find a job and to get a visa sponsorship, which is very difficult because it's literally based on a lottery. In other places like Canada, you get 3 years. In the UK, you get 2 years. In Germany, you get 18 months. So again, different range of options. But you have to remember that college is only 3 to 4 years of your life. So this is something you have to think about right now and not when you graduate. Last thing to note about country selection is that different countries will also have different entry requirements. The United States, for example, cares a lot about your extracurricular activities, sometimes even more than tests. If you're finishing grade 11 and you only have 1 sports club on your resume, United States would just not be a good option for you. UK, for example, requires 12 years of completed education before you can start your bachelor's degree, which means if you're coming from a country like mine where you only have 11 years of school, it's actually not possible. In that case, before doing an undergrad degree, you will have to do a foundation year, which is not something that everybody wants to do. Let's move on. Now you've picked the country, let's talk about choosing a specific university. If you feel lost and confused, that is very normal because there are over 23,000 universities in the world. Parents probably chose the university that was closest to their house while you're presented with so many options. First point on university selection is, please, I'm begging you, do not choose based on rankings alone. I highly recommend you to read some articles that dive deeper into how exactly these college rankings are determined, but one thing I can tell you is that majority of the ranking is comprised of things that have nothing to do with your actual college experience. There you'll see things like employer compensation, research, citations, but it's not about how much knowledge and experience you're actually getting. I went to NYU Abu Dhabi, which is not even ranked on QS because it's a new university. Another very important mind shift I want you to have is that you should stop looking at university as a whole and look into your specific program. Harvard is amazing in so many ways, but let's say if you want to study business, it is not the best choice for you because Harvard literally does not have an undergrad business program. You have to dig into specific curriculum, your research facilities, professors, class sizes, and everything that has to do with your particular major. Going back to the question of funding, if you are somebody who needs financial aid or scholarship, you have to make sure that the university provides it specifically for international students. Something you have to be aware of is that majority of scholarships are actually not meant for international students, but for domestic applicants. So just because you saw a TikTok video where somebody said that they got a full scholarship to a certain university does not mean you are eligible as well, because that person might have been a US citizen applying to a US university. It could be quite confusing to research, but this is exactly why Borderless has such a huge emphasis on specifically international students, and any information you see on our website will be tailored to you. Location is another extremely important factor when it comes to university choice. People who have never been to the United States have no idea how gigantic and diverse this country is. Being in New York or LA or Texas will be completely different experiences. And even small things like food or weather can actually make you pretty miserable, so please give this kind of research enough of your time. The final thing I really want you to look at when choosing a university is employment statistics. As I've already mentioned, college is only 3 to 4 years of your life, and its main goal is to set you up for success in the future. And in my opinion, the best way to judge this is to see what are alumni of that university currently doing. Do they work at the companies where you potentially want to work in? Are they starting businesses that you might want to start? Do they get enough salaries? Are you excited about what they're doing? To me, employment rates and alumni success matters a lot more than a ranking. The next bit I want to talk to you about is choosing your major. And I want to make it very separate from choosing your passion because that's a very different topic. I want to talk to you about actual consequences of you choosing a specific major. The first thing you need to know is that in most countries, you will be set to the major that you're applying for. So if you're applying for mechanical engineering, you have to be graduating with a mechanical engineering degree. The United States is probably the only exception where, especially in liberal arts colleges, you have a lot of flexibility and you can declare your major often by the end of the sophomore year. I've seen people who would come in as a mechanical engineering major and then graduate with a history major, and it's very common. Then, in some cases, your major choice will also affect how long you can stay in the country after you graduate. Remember I talked about OPT earlier in the video? So if you are a STEM major, you get a 3-year OPT, which is when you can work, and you have 3 chances for H-1B work visa lottery. But if you are a non-STEM major, you only get 1 year, which means 1 chance, which I think is a very big difference. Visa sponsorship rates also differ by major, and in the recent years, tech and engineering jobs have had the highest success rate. And one last thing I have to say about major is please do not apply for a major just because it's less competitive. I see this advice on TikTok a lot, and I've had my students ask me if they should switch a major, and my answer is always absolutely no. If you're passionate about computer science and you have your projects and hackathons, but suddenly you're like, oh, computer science is the most competitive major, let me apply for an anthropology instead. That mismatch in your profile and in your story hurts you a lot more than any small gain you might get from changing a major. Also, admissions officers are very good at telling what is a genuine passion, like computer science, versus manufactured one if you try to portray yourself as somebody who's really into anthropology. This discussion brings me to part 4, which is extracurricular activities, probably one of the most misunderstood components of a college application. First thing to know, not every country cares about extracurricular activities. It is primarily a United States thing. An extracurricular is something that you do outside of class that you also hopefully care about. It doesn't have to be super formal or official like debate club or an MUN. It could also be taking care of a younger sibling, it could be doing a part-time job at the grocery store, it could be coding your own project. Now, a few very practical tips about extracurricular activities. Number 1, quality beats quantity every single time. A student with 2 meaningful activities over 3 years will be a lot more impressive than somebody who stuffed 5 activities into 1 summer. It's not difficult to just sign up to 10 clubs, especially if they're available at your school. What is actually difficult is sticking to the club and hopefully showing progression. For example, starting from a member and then becoming a president. Number 2, impact is everything. It's not about attending meetings, writing reports, posting videos. It's about what has changed because of your efforts. If you attended 20 meetings, but all you did in those meetings is sit on your phone and chat, it's not very helpful. Remember how I said that your activities should be connected to your major? This is a very important point. If you're applying for a computer science major, but then 6 out of your 10 activities are about making YouTube videos, again, it's a big mismatch. So not every single activity has to connect to your major, but when they look at your whole list, they have to be able to tell what it is that you're passionate about. Lastly, context matters a lot. Some of you will be coming from public schools that have no resources, and some of you will be coming from well-funded schools in big cities. And the expectation for what both of you can do will be quite different, which is very fair. So if you don't have many resources available to you, do not compare yourself to an applicant who does have those resources. At the same time, don't use it as an excuse to not do anything. Alright, now you've picked a country, you've picked a university, you've picked your major, you've built your profile. How are you going to pay for college? That is the last bit of this video. Let's start with the best case scenario and the dream for many people. Need-blind universities in the United States that meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. That was a lot of words, I know, but in simple terms, these are free universities. And yes, free is in quotations because it's not technically free. They're going to look at your financial situation and then run a calculation to assess how much money you will be needing to be able to attend. Now, here's the catch. Places that provide such huge scholarships and are need-blind are very, very competitive. These are your Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, and a few other schools that are just very hard to get into in the first place. Then you also have a pretty extensive list of colleges that do meet your full need, but they are need aware, which means that the less money you have, the more difficult it becomes to get in. This model of financial need or need-based scholarships is now quite popular in other countries in Europe and Asia. In general, the United States has some of the most expensive colleges, but they're also the most generous when it comes to financial aid, while places like Canada, Australia, and the UK barely have any scholarships. Apart from financial aid, there are also merit scholarships, and this is where the range goes crazy. You can have $1,000 scholarships or $100,000 scholarships, and they will both be just called merit scholarships. For some scholarships, you will automatically be considered when you submit your main applications, but for some of them, you'll have to write many essays, do interviews, and sometimes even fly to a different country. So again, it depends and you have to do your own research. Then if you're not able to get funding from your university, in some cases, your government might be able to fund you through government scholarships. However, they often have a condition that after graduation, you have to come home and work in your country for a few years, which is a big decision that should not be taken lightly. I have never come home after graduation, so I don't know if I would be open to that kind of scholarship. If you want to learn about different kinds of scholarships that international students have been getting, you can read this playlist on our website. And that is it. That is your crash course on everything that you need to know to apply abroad. There are also grades and test scores, but these are very self-explanatory, so I didn't want to spend time on it. This feels like a lot. It's because it is a lot. It is confusing, but again, this is why we have built Borderless. Our platform is here to help you with every single step of the application process, so if you're currently applying, the link is below.